Hello learners, this is Dr. Mahak, Assistant Professor in Economics. Today we will study about WTO, World Trade Organization. Practically all nations impose some restrictions on the free flow of international trade. Since these restrictions and regulations deal with the nation's trade or commerce, they are generally known as trade or commercial policies. When we take into account the effect of various supranational influences and international agreements on commercial policies, the global commercial policy come into view. During the Great Depression in the early 1930s, the world trade fell particularly due to free imposition of tariffs on imports by many countries. This resulted in reduced economic activity, lower efficiency, and less trade without an increase in employment. Since then, several multilateral and regional agreements have taken place to avoid such situations in future. Before studying WTO, we will discuss about GATT, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, an international organization created in 1947 with the headquarters in Geneva, Switzerland, was devoted to promotion of free trade through multilateral trade negotiations. GATT has rested on three basic principles. First, non-discrimination. This principle refers to absolute acceptance of any reciprocal tariff reduction negotiated by one country with any of its trading partners. The principle diverges slightly only in cases of economic integration, such as custom unions, and in the trade between a nation and its former colonies and dominions. Second, elimination of non-tariff trade barriers, such as quotas, except of agricultural products and for nations in balance of payment difficulties. GATT also made each member agree not to resort to unilateral tariff hikes to prevent outbreak of tariff that only shrinks mutual gains from trade. Third, consultation among nations in solving trade disputes within the GATT framework. Under the auspices of GATT, 8 rounds of global trade talks since 1948 have been completed. The 3 recently concluded GATT agreements are the Kennedy Round, completed in 1967, the Tokyo Round, completed in 1979, and the Uruguay Round, completed in 1993. Each of these rounds have resulted in reducing world tariffs substantially. The first two by 1/3 each, and the last by about 40%. The Uruguay round replaced the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade with the World Trade Organization in 1995 in Geneva, with authority not only in trade in industrial products but also in agricultural products and services. On April 15, 1994, 124 nations joined together and decided to set up a permanent international organization called World Trade Organization, that is WTO, similar in status to the IMF and the World Bank, to oversee the implementation of the provisions of agreement and by the member countries. As a result, the WTO has become operational since January 1st, 1995. Now, what is WTO? As a result of agreements signed under the auspices of the GATT, the WTO has come into being in place of GATT to give a boost to international trade through increased global market competition. WTO is a landmark in the history of multilateral trade relations. The WTO embodies an international trade organization having set of rules and principles mutually designed and agreed upon to promote international trade in general and reduction of tariff barriers and removal of import restrictions in particular. It is a new world trade order or system WTO has taken over GATT to implement the agreement reached at the 8th round of GATT negotiations, also known as Uruguay Round, on December 15, 1993. In short, WTO is a new globally recognized trade organization with the new name succeeding GATT on renewed agreements and having a new vision and tougher enforcement power to promote international trade. The preamble of WTO. The preamble of agreement establishing the WTO states that there is a need for positive efforts designed to ensure that developing countries, and especially the least developed among them, secure a share in the growth of international trade commensurate with the need of their economic development. The developing countries will benefit from the increased exports and better treatment with respect to measures taken by other WTO members. Technical assistance is to be provided to developing countries to assist them in assuming their obligations and more effectively realizing the benefits of the multilateral trading system under WTO. Now, organizational structure of WTO. The organizational structure of WTO is based on 4 hierarchical levels. The hierarchies are follows. First, Ministerial Conference. It is the highest hierarchical level in organizational structure. It is composed of representatives of all the members which meet at least once every 2 years. It is the policy and strategy making body. The Ministerial Conference takes decisions on all matters under any of the multilateral trade agreements and thus carries out the functions of the WTO and takes any action necessary to this effect. Second, General Council. It is the executive body of the WTO. The Ministerial Conference gets the policies and strategies implemented and executed through General Council. All the member countries of the WTO have their representatives in General Council. The General Council is responsible for the discharge of the responsibilities of the dispute settlement body as given in the understanding on rules and procedures governing the settlement of disputes. It is assisted by the dispute settlement panel and appellate body. Second, the discharge of the responsibility of the Trade Policy Review Body as mentioned in the Trade Policy Review Mechanism. The above 2 bodies may have their own respective chairman and may form their own respective rules for procedures for fulfillment of their responsibilities. After Ministerial Conference, second General Council, third is the Functional Council under the General Council. There are 3 functional councils under the General Council. First is Council for the Trade in Goods. This council undertakes the functioning of the Multilateral Trade Agreement MTA relating to trade in goods. Second is Council for Trade in Services. This council undertakes the functioning of the MTA, that is Multilateral Trade Agreement relating to trade in services. Third one is Council for Trade Related Aspects of Intellectual Property Rights, that is TRIPS. This council undertakes the implementations and functioning of all the agreements relating to this area. Fourth is the Committees and Management Bodies. The Ministerial Conference MC establishes 3 functional committees for discharging functions assigned to them. These committees are Committee on Trade and Development. This committee considers the issue relating to developing countries, particularly and least with the developed countries. Committee on Balance of Payment. This committee arranges consultations among member countries regarding the trade restrictive measures adopted by some countries with a view to coping with their balance of payment problems. Third one is Committee on Budget, Finance and Administration. This committee deals with the issue relating to the budget, finance and administration of the WTO. In this sense, the organized structure of WTO is divided into four levels. First is Ministerial Conference, second General Council, third Functional Council under the General Council, and fourth is the Committees and Management Bodies. Now we will study the functions of WTO. The following are the functions of WTO. First one is WTO facilitates the management of multilateral trade agreements MTA and the plurilateral trade agreements PTAs for the fulfillment of their obligations. It negotiates all multilateral trade relations concerning the above agreements among member countries. It facilitates implementation of the results of the negotiations as decided by the Ministerial Conference. It administers the understanding on rules and procedures governing the settlement of disputes forming part of the agreements MTAs and PTAs. It is responsible for administration of the Trade Policy Review Mechanism TPRM forming part of the agreement. It is also the organ for establishing coordination and regarding the economic policy formation with other wings of the UNO such as IBRD or World Bank and IMF. It utilizes the world resources in an optimum way. Now we will study the relation between India and WTO. India is one of the founder members of World Trade Organization. India has 90% of its trade with those countries that are member of WTO. There has been lot of debate on the issue whether India would gain or lose by becoming member of WTO or by signing Dunkel draft. Following arguments can be advanced in favor or against India becoming the member of the WTO. Advantages of WTO for India. India is likely to get following advantages from WTO. First is increase in foreign trade. WTO has helped India in increasing its foreign trade. Being a member of WTO, India has its trade relations with 160 countries. WTO has helped in removing tariffs and non-tariff barriers, and this has opened various new markets for India. Now, India's foreign trade in goods as well as in services is increasing at a very fast rate. Second is increase in agricultural exports. As a result of reduction in subsidies on agricultural goods given by the developed countries, demand for variety of Indian food grains will rise in international market. It will provide opportunity for India to increase export of agricultural products. WTO has recommended a cut in the custom duties and reduction in import restriction on agricultural goods. It will also promote agricultural exports from India considerably. In the year, significantly, India's agricultural exports are expected to double in next 5 years. Increase in inflow of foreign investment. As per TRIMS, government has removed all the barriers to foreign investment. It has attracted foreign investment in India. Many MNCs have set up their branches in India like LG, Samsung, Sony, etc. It has improved the level of investment in the economy. With increased investment, employment has also increased. Inflow of better technology and better quality of products. With the increase in foreign trade and foreign investment, there will be inflow of better technology and high quality products. It will improve the standard of living of masses and promote industrial growth. Benefits of multilateral trade system. Under WTO, when a trade agreement is signed between member countries, then it will promote the foreign trade of one country with all other member countries who have signed this agreement. Before WTO, foreign trade was usually bilateral, that is, between two countries. WTO promoted multilateral trade. It has increased the trade relation of India with 149 nations. If multilateral trade system of WTO had not been prevalent, India would have to enter into separate trade agreements with each nation. Promotion to research because of patents. Patentization will promote research as researchers get benefit in the form of royalty on patents. Patenting will improve research activities in the economy. There will be increased investment in research and development. It will result in improved variety of seeds, fertilizers, pesticides and other products. Benefits of using quality seeds and new varieties of plants. By paying one time, our farmers can purchase quality seeds and new varieties of plants. It will improve the agricultural production and productivity and will benefit our farmers. Moreover, farmers are allowed to retain a part of their output as seeds for the subsequent crops. That is, on subsequent crops, they will not have to purchase seeds and they are allowed to use their farm safe seeds. Restricts dumping. If a country dumps its excess production in the other nation so as to damage its domestic industry, then the affected country can lodge a complaint with WTO in this regard. WTO's dispute settlement body takes against such nations. Thus, WTO agreements help to curb dumping activities in the world trade. Now, disadvantages to India or argument against WTO. Critics are of the opinion that agreements on the provision of GATT or WTO will be beneficial to developed countries alone and underdeveloped countries like India will stand to lose. Entering of foreign companies in India will rob our culture and traditions and the country will be plundered on the patron of East India Company. Communist leader Somnath Chatterjee opined that the final document of GATT or WTO is a document that will render India a colony of developed countries once again. Future generations of the nation will never forgive the ruling party for such a blunder. Following arguments are given against WTO or GATT. First is disadvantage to agricultural sector. It is apprehended that by including agriculture in the GATT or WTO, Indian farmers will become dependent on multinational companies for improved seeds and agricultural technology. The farmers will not be able to save better seeds for their crop and will be compelled to buy at high rates insecticides, fertilizers, agricultural machinery, etc. from multinational companies every time. Big farmers alone will be able to take advantage of improved farm technology. The cumulative effect of all this will be that small farmers who are large in number will be forced to sell their lands. This will further aggravate the problem of unemployment in rural sector. Plants and cattle feeds will come under the ambit of patent and so will be under the control of multinational companies. This will harm the interest of Indian agriculture. Moreover, it will adversely affect the announcement of minimum spot price of agricultural products and public distribution system. Second is reduction in subsidy. Critics are of the opinion that after concluding GATT or WTO agreement, subsidy to agricultural sector will be slashed. It will adversely affect the poor farmers. Third, import of food grains. It is apprehended that by entering into GATT or WTO agreement, surplus food grain of developed countries will be imported on a large scale. It will adversely affect countries' balance of payments. Fourth, restrictions on the use of brand seeds. Under WTO, scientists and farmers will not be able to use brand seeds for commercial purpose. Under the circumstances, big farmers alone could buy foreign expensive seeds. It will be difficult for small and marginal farmers to make use of improved variety of seeds. It will widen the gap of economic disparity. Fifth, patent rights of natural products. If foreign MNCs took initiative and secured patent rights over minor natural products of India, it may lead to serious consequences for Indian agriculture. For instance, neem can be used for making soap, toothpaste, medicine, etc. Similarly, there is a large demand of isabgol in foreign countries. Their foreign patent may prove very expensive for India. Sixth, argument against trims. In terms of WTO, India could not impose any restriction on foreign investment. Consequently, multinational companies will be free to establish their industries in India. It will harm indigenous industries. Domestic investors will suffer as they have little capacity to compete with the multinational companies. As a result, on the one hand, countries' production will get discouraged and unemployment situation aggravated, and on the other, dominance of multinational companies over countries' economy will go on extending and their profits will continue to rise. All this will harm our economy. Argument against TRIPS. It is argued against TRIPS, that is trade related intellectual property, that it will discourage the process of research and innovation in the country. Critics are of the opinion that it will be unjust to have uniform standards for all member countries in matter of TRIPS because these standards vary with economic and technical development of each country. The level of technology found in the developed country can never be reached by developing countries. India will therefore stand to lose. Any setback to research and innovation process will accentuate the backwardness of our agriculture, and medical services will be beyond the reach of an ordinary man. It is feared that the prices of medicines may rise by 10 to 15 times. Next is disadvantage of patentization. Maximum apprehensions are being expressed against the provision of patent for the period of 20 years. Such a long period will have an adverse effect on Indian economy, especially on scientific and medical research. Consequently, prices of most of the goods are likely to increase by 6 to 20 fold. The above apprehensions distinctly indicate the wholesome result of WTO are not forthcoming, as it is evident from the following account. So, after analyzing the various issues of WTO and its impact on India, it is eventually be concluded that the India are likely to be exploited by the developed world through diplomatically engineered provisions of the WTO, especially in the long run. The situation demands that India should gear up the strategies collectively in upgrading the level of knowledge and research consequences among the researchers, intellectuals, and planners of India. The government should considerably strengthen its infrastructure for undertaking global trade negotiations. There is a pressing need for active involvement of the government in terms of both enunciating broad policy issues and specific actions in relation to the WTO. It is futile to hope that in years to come, country's economy will be beneficial or benefited by WTO and her participation in world trade will enhance. The objective situation demands that India should chalk out the strategy that deters the developed countries from overwhelming them and harming their interests. Thank you.